Well, hello everyone. I would say good morning to some and good afternoon to others, depending on where you are around the world and around the country. Thank you for joining us today. We are doing our OnGo 101 for the OnGo Alliance. I'm going to practice saying that a lot today and try to get that straight and that repetition to occur naturally. Just a little background on OnGo 101 for you is this is something we have done many times now. I guess this is probably our 6th, 7th time doing the OnGo 101 session as part of our members meetings. Virtual now, of course, as opposed to doing it face-to-face, as we all know. But this has become sort of a tradition. We have several presentations for you. The idea is really to give both members, new members, members who've been with us for a while, but maybe some new folks that are joining us, as well as potential members, some information about the Alliance and some insights as to how we work and what's going on. So with that, Josh, you could start advancing the slides for me. So one of the things I want to make you aware of is there is a questions panel that you'll notice in your dashboard for the GoToWebinar. This is how to ask questions. You put your questions in during the session. We'll try to make time for each of the presenters to have just at least one question that they can take live. But any questions that we're given, we will record and we will look to have answers for. We'll answer them after the webinar and provide that to all of the participants in the as well as the slides. So just be aware that question panel is where to ask your questions. Next slide, Josh. Little background, little agenda first, before we do a little background, is we've got some presentations, myself starting off, Alan Ewing, the Executive Director. We'll transition over to Dave Wright, becoming the OnGo Alliance. We'll talk about certification with our certification PM, Jörg Rackensig. We'll talk about some of the ecosystem efforts and how we make OnGo work and some of the work that's going on to make that reality with our ecosystem PM, Ed Pashan. Our marketing director, Oren Binder, will talk to us about how to market OnGo and what the efforts are during the year and then beyond when it comes to marketing OnGo. And then one of the things we've done each meeting for this almost 2 years now is have a Sas Admin Panel. And we're very fortunate to have representatives from all 5 of our Sas admins with us today to talk. I will give them a few questions, and then you guys please have your questions ready as well for them, and we'll have a discussion among the Sas admins. So our next slide. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Alliance. So the OnGo Alliance itself, we are an industry forum, we're an industry association. We are here to champion 3GPP-based RANs in shared spectrum bands. If you've been with us previously for our 101 sessions, we always were very specific about the CBRS band here as CBRS Alliance, but of course that's our expansion of our remit for the organization. And Dave will talk to us a little bit more about that in the following session. But if you've been with us, or if you haven't, we began as the CBRS Alliance a little over 4 years ago, or 4.5 years ago, focusing on the US CBRS band. As of January 1 of this year, we became the OnGo Alliance. If you would like to learn more about the CBRS band, which is still the foundation of all the work we're doing and still really the primary focus of the Alliance and its efforts, this can be found in the FCC rules. We provided the link for you there if you'd like to learn more. And while this YouTube video from our friends over at WEN Forum is a little, is getting a little older, it's still quite valuable and quite valid for a lot of the information that you'll see there to give you some grounding on what CBRS and the spectrum sharing mechanisms in the CBRS band are all about. Next slide, Josh. So just a quick rundown of the history. You can see us going back, the history really goes back to 2010 when NTIA identified the CBRS band for spectrum share, possible shared use. We advanced through the timeline. One of the things to note here really is in 2019, those initial commercial deployment launch occurred. followed by the full commercial service launch at the beginning of 2020, roughly a year ago now. And then PAL auction, middle of the year, quite important for the PALs, the priority access licenses. That auction taking place with the FCC and very well attended, and a lot of activity there. And then finally, the one thing on the timeline here to note is CBRS Alliance becomes the OnGo Alliance at the beginning of 2021. Next slide. A little bit about internal structure to the Alliance. If you are new to the Alliance or considering joining the Alliance, there's really 5 working groups where the members come together to do the work of the Alliance. And those you see here. Marketing working group, you'll hear more about from Oren Binder, our marketing director. The technical working group, really where spec development occurs. The specifications sit on top of 3GPP. We do not rewrite or touch the core functionality of 3GPP. What we do is instead support spectrum sharing with our specifications. The test and cert work group, you'll hear from our PM there, Yoav Brakenzik, to tell you a little bit about what that is and what it may become looking down the road. And then our ecosystem working groups, Ed Pashan will talk to us about those, our business working group and our deployment and operations working group, where really we talk about the business verticals and we talk about elements in the ecosystem that help enable those verticals. So that's a quick picture of the org. If you would like to learn more, if you're new to the org again or considering joining, very happy to help give you the rundown there. And next slide. So here we are today at 187 members. If you were with us toward the end of last year, I believe we were actually at 194, 95 even. We had some of our members merge with other members or purchase other members. We had a few that changed business direction, but it seems that the largest percentage of loss, if you like, that's not a great term, but a decrease in our membership was because some of our members purchased other members. And so while that, the way I've chosen to look at that is the folks that were involved, interested, and active are still involved, interested, and active. And it's just a matter now that the ecosystem is maturing and companies are really seeing the value in coming together. So we continue to grow. In fact, we might be at 188 members by the end of the day. It's quite possible. We have a new member pending even now. So looking forward to welcoming even more. And while it may be a somewhat artificial milestone, that 200 is going to be, I think, a cause for at least a couple of virtual high fives among the leadership of the organization. You also see across the top here, these companies that are featured across the top. These are our board member companies. These are the companies that really lead the organization from the perspective of their engagement, their dedication, and really helping us make all of the rest of the organization work. All of our members, one of the things I take a lot of pride in is talking to our members and keeping them involved. So anytime that you would like to chat or learn more or need some help, I am at your disposal at any time to assist there. Okay, Josh, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I believe I'll be introducing Dave Wright, our president, talking to us about becoming the OnGo Alliance. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Very good. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. I'll add my welcome to Alan's. It's good as we start the new year to have a number of new members joining us, and I'm sure we also have some people who may have been around for a little while and just wanted to attend the session. So wherever you may be in your journey with the Alliance, we're glad you are here. You're joining at a really opportune time, and we're welcome. We're glad to have you, that is. I'll just quickly mention, no, I do not have measles, and I didn't get in a bar fight, although that would be a fun story to recount if I had. But I actually went to the dermatologist on Friday, so if you see some weird splotches on me, or that's because the dermatologist was having a good time messing around with my face on Friday, so apologies for that. So did want to talk to you a little bit about the journey as we start 2021. It's really a new chapter in the life of the Alliance as we've transitioned from the CBRS Alliance to the OnGo Alliance. And Josh, if you could advance the slide, I just want to give you a little bit of the background on that for those of you, especially who were not part of the conversations that we had with the membership in the fall, essentially. But this is a conversation really that the board has been having for a number of years, frankly. But in the second half of 2020, it really came to, I would say, a critical decision point where we looked at the successes that we've had with OnGo solutions, both LTE and now 5G operating in the CBRS band in the US, looked at the fact that we had gotten through all of the different processes to get to the point of first initial commercial deployments in September of 19, and then getting the full commercial deployment authorization in January, just under a year ago. I think it was January 27th, if I remember correctly, of last year that we got the full commercial deployment authorization. And then looking at how the ecosystem has ramped since then, despite the pandemic and some of the impacts from that, and in some cases even due to the pandemic. I mean, we had some deployments that were really encouraging to see where people were using OnGo solutions and CBRS to actually help set up triage centers, treatment centers, provide distance learning for school communities where the students were unconnected. So, that has all been encouraging. But as we look at the numbers, and we try not to share anything out of school, but even public reports lately have talked about 100,000 or close to 100,000 CBSDs being deployed, and to do that in less than a year is pretty significant, especially when you look at historical small cell rollouts. So we're excited about that, and the board was then thinking, okay, what do we do now? And that's, I want to make very clear, we don't think that we're done with the CBRS band. In fact, there are a number of good opportunities and challenges that lie before the Alliance in regards to CBRS, whether it's the implementation of the PAL tier, continuing to work on the coexistence framework, both for GA to GA, but then also GA to PAL, going back to the federal government and trying to revisit maybe some of the protection requirements as we get more field data in on how effective, or maybe too effective, we're being in protecting those federal incumbents. These are all things that I think we have to look forward to in CBRS. But we also want to consider what's going on globally. And we're going to talk about this more tomorrow during the industry update at the members meeting. But if you look around the world now, there are many different countries that have already taken, or probably soon will take, action to open bands for private operations, shared operations, local licensing. You'll kind of hear all these different terms thrown around. A lot of activity in Europe, so Germany, UK, France, different frequency ranges there, but also in South America, in Asia, starting to see more and more activity. So I'll actually share a slide tomorrow that kind of captures a lot of this global opportunity. And it's also important to note that we don't plan to become an advocacy organization. We have, and let me clarify that one a little bit. We have advocated here in the U.S. in order to get the band opened for commercial operations. So we advocated with the FCC, DoD, NTIA to kind of try to accelerate things and get the market commercialized, or get the band commercialized as soon as possible. But we didn't really advocate on the technical rules, even when there was the effort to kind of take a second look at the PAL tier and the licensing terms for those PAL licenses. The Alliance has not taken a position on those because, frankly, our members may have different views on some of those things, and we certainly feel that's the case with these countries who may not have made decisions yet. So we're not planning to get into that business. But once a country has made a decision, such as Germany with 3.7 to 3.8, or the UK with 3.8 to 4.2, we do think that a lot of the work products that we have done, deployment guides, certification efforts, the shared H&I program. In some way, those may be helpful and or applicable in other bands and in other geographies. And the other bands piece I should mention, there's other things going on in the U.S. that we may eventually want to participate in. The 3450 to 3550 megahertz band, potentially. The 6 gigahertz unlicensed band, potentially, right? So these are all areas that our previous mission really didn't allow us to participate in or to really say anything about. Now we've got the latitude to do that. So the board made a recommendation to expand the mission to encompass all 3 GPP technologies operating in shared spectrum. We discussed that with our members, had a member vote in, goodness, I'm trying to remember exactly when that was. It was October, November timeframe, and it was overwhelmingly approved by the membership. And so, even though it was approved at the end of 2020, we decided we would relaunch the organization publicly beginning this year. It just seemed like a good natural transition point. So, you've probably seen the announcements that we made a week ago, and the good amount of press coverage that came out of that was quite encouraging. I think it was largely supportive. I saw people like Peter Yarrick from GSMA Intelligence saying, yeah, this is a natural thing for the Alliance to be doing given what's going on again around the globe. So I think it's been well received, and we're looking forward to this. I should again highlight that at this point, the board has not taken a decision to pursue anything beyond CBRS. So as of January 18th, 2021, the sole focus of the Alliance's work programs and working groups is on LTE and 5G operations in the CBRS band in the United States. But we're also grateful that we now have the latitude to consider other things. So, the board will take inputs from members, from regulators, from external organizations or companies that may come to us and ask for help or ask if we have information that we could share with them that would be helpful, and the board will respond to those on essentially a case-by-case basis. Yeah, so I think that's this slide. Josh, if we could move to the next one, please. And this just really captures, what the mission was and what the mission is. So as Alan said, the Alliance has now been publicly, in existence for 4.5 years. I was part of the formative conversations even prior to that. So I think, you could trace the genesis of the organization really back almost 6 years ago now. And in those early formative conversations with the 6 founding members, we very clearly decided that we wanted to, be razor focused on, at that point, really LTE and now 5G, but on, the CBRS band. We didn't want to be distracted, and, there were other organizations that were looking, potentially at other geographies and other bands at that point in time. But I would say that the fortunes of some of those organizations have changed from now, while ours has really been a story of success. I mean, to go from 8 to almost 200 members, the breadth and diversity of the membership, the equipment ecosystem that's formed, all the different technical programs, the awareness, and then just sort of this parallel growth and emergence and just all the buzz around private networking now. It's not a US CBRS thing anymore. It's much more of a global phenomenon around people wondering how they can use LTE and 5G to solve internal communications needs, as well as neutral host, right? So, and those are not necessarily mutually exclusive either. There could be a lot of overlap. So all of that to say, it's a good time for the Alliance to have this latitude. Again, we don't want to take our eyes off the ball. There won't be a sudden shift in direction, but we're excited about 2021, excited to bring in some good speakers tomorrow to introduce some of these other bands and other geographies to the membership. And the board, again, will be keeping its eyes out and its ears open for requests and opportunities. And to the extent that you may have knowledge or information about again, different countries or different bands where you think the Alliance could be involved, should be involved, please reach out to me, reach out to Alan, reach out to any of the board members. We'd love to have your input. So I think I've taken my time, and I'll turn it back over to Alan. Oh, I guess I'm supposed to see if there may be any questions. So any questions on anything I may have covered?
Yeah, I was just watching, Dave. We haven't had any come in yet, but I've been encouraging folks also in the chat window to get questions in.
Okay.
So we can always circle back around if we have some time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Very good. So next up, I get to introduce Dr. Jörg Rakensick. Jörg is going to talk to us about the state of the certification program and where we're going to be heading. So Jörg, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alan. And let's directly move forward and go into some of the details. Josh, if you can move to the next slide, or to the first slide of the giving some update on what certification is and what certification is going to be in the future. So OnGo certification is not different than other certifications programs you may be aware of. So it's really core mission for us to support our membership who are deploying OnGo solutions. And the way we do this is ensuring that those solutions being put on the being deployed are compatible and they're interoperable across the ecosystem. So it's the main purpose of the program is really ensuring compatibility and interoperability. For OnGo, we have two main founding pillars. On the one side, we have the FCC Part 96 rules, which are based on the US for the CBRS band. The WIN Forum has put specifications around this, and we are referring to them within our OnGo specification. As FCC Part 96 rules are independent of the air interfaces, OnGo Alliance is specifically looking at 3GPP specification, as Dave and Alan pointed out. So we are looking for LTE deployments as well as 5G and our solutions. So that's why we have as a second pillar this 3GPP specification and the framework developed there. On top of those, OnGo is having their putting additional features on, having additional specifications and regulations. That's what is included in the OnGo certification program as critical aspects. So features within OnGo include GAA PAR coexistence, dedicated network services, identifiers, and so forth. So that's all included within the certification program. If we move to the next slide shows on which components, what is the current scope within our Release 1 certification program. The current scope is on standalone CBSDs and CBSD domain proxy pairs. To be noted there, domain proxies are always certified and tested as a pair with a specific CBSD because there is no open protocol, open specification defined as an interface between the two. So therefore, we always certify and test them as a pair. Within OnGo Release 1 testing and certification, we basically have two methods of testing. We do protocol compliance testing of how the CBSD or the domain proxy interface and interact with the SAS, the spectrum access system. So we really look at whether the messages are compliant, whether the format of the message is correct, the data is encoded correctly, and whether the protocol is enforced and compliant. The second part is performance testing, and we do performance testing on the air interface side. So meaning the interface side of the CBSD, we basically validate that the power measurement constraints as provided, as directed by the SAS, is implemented by the CBSD. So we validate that the power levels are compliant with what the SAS has granted. The certification process itself is pretty straightforward, and that is shown on the next slide. The next slide shows the basic steps of the certification program, and it's pretty simple. The vendors start submitting the certification request. We have three different forms of certification. It can be a full certification, or this would be an initial certification. It can be an engineering change order if you have already certified a product, they would like to do a change to it, or can be as well as a rebranding. So once you submitted a request, the OnGo authorized test lab in ATL performs all the necessary testing. Once the testing has completed, the ATL is going to upload the test results and all the necessary documentation for this. And then the OnGo Alliance Certification Board is going to review those results. So we basically do a check whether all the necessary test cases have been tested, whether all the test results are positive. And once this is all achieved, and the vendor has submitted its certification fee, we are, as an alliance, are granting OnGo certification. So it's very simple. It's very straightforward certification step. If you go to the next slide, this shows you some numbers of what we have achieved already. For OnGo certification, the number of OnGo certifications is 50. So we have already certified 50 CBSDs. A bit more than half of them are CBSD domain proxy pairs. 46% are standalone CBSDs. On the right side, you see the distribution of the device categories. The majority of the certified devices are Cat B devices, 42%. A good amount of devices are CPEs. They are now making up close to a quarter of certified devices. So this, at the moment, I have to say, the fastest growing part of the OnGo ecosystem is really CPE devices. So that's a good to see that our members are really interested in deploying CPE devices. And the remaining share of 34% are indoor CBSDs, so Cat A devices. If you go to the next slide, as OnGo is currently only certifying the CBSDs, so within OnGo Release 1, we don't certify end user devices. But in order for you to give you an understanding on the depth of the ecosystem on the end user device side, I have here a slide which summarizes the Fcc authorizations. You see that about 180 unique end user devices have been authorized by the Fcc to operate in the CBSD band. And you see as well a pie diagram which shows you the share of the device types. A big part of the end user devices are mobile devices, so smartphones and other mobile devices, and portable devices. So these are basically the standard smart device ecosystem compose a big chunk of the end user device side. So it's really good to see. And then we have seen a huge increase of authorized devices in the second half of last year. The other part are then routers as well as modules. So these are basically chipsets, which are then used in other end user devices. So this is where we are at the moment. So this is the status of the current certification program. But we're also looking on how to develop this further, where this can lead to, and how the certification program can look like in 3 to 5 years. If you go to the next slide, we basically see that there are two aspects of where the certification program can support our members in deploying solutions. On the one side, we see the evolution and the development of features, where we basically see they're getting packaged into what as the working title we use at the moment, levels, compliance level. And these are the standard technical developments of our technical specifications. So we see features like GA coexistence, PAL coexistence, support for 5G NR coexistence, 2D antenna patterns, and so forth. So we see those the technical evolution of our standards. Some of those are covered as mandatory requirements. Some of them are captured as optional requirements. So what we see as a role of the certification program is to package them into levels. So basically group them together, make them manageable from a certification and testing perspective. So we put them together and package them and describe them. Optional features, we see them basically allow them to attach to certification as badges. So you can earn a badge for also supporting, for example, 5G, or to also support other optional features. If you go to the next slide, this shows the second level. Besides the technical evolution, we also see an evolution of the business aspects. So there are developments in use cases in okay, no, this slide is there, at least I can see now as well. So we have business verticals, we have use cases, we have technology bundles in a way, and we basically group them as profiles. And profiles typically have technical requirements, but they're basically based on market needs. At the moment, we have identified a few of those use cases and profiles: fixed wireless access, neutral host networks, private networks, and industrial IoT. And the final slide on the next slide is basically how we see this all fitting together. So it's basically a two-dimensional matrix where we see interceptions between the level, the compliance level and the profiles. And that basically describes the role of the certification program as we envision it in the future best. So we see it as the means to define technical content and divide it up, package it, channel it, and then finally allowed to validate those packages. So this is currently what the test and certification program is really focusing at the moment to provide a vision of how the certification program can support our members deploying various different technical solutions, supporting business cases and verticals, and have the flexibility in doing so. With that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Jörg, there's just one question, but maybe a clarification, that FCC certification for CBSD must be complete prior to the OnGo certification being awarded. And just to clarify that.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. So we expect, before starting OnGo certification, we expect the Fcc authorization to be completed. So members typically come to the finalize the OnGo certification when they have the FCC identifier ready. You can start doing this in parallel, but we will only grant certification after the FCC is authorized.
Excellent. Very good. That was the main question. The other question we received, yes, there will be a recording of this session available online. It will be uploaded to the website. Probably be about a week, just practically speaking, because of the meetings this week and other logistics. So that will be there. So thanks, Jörg. Very appreciated. Good stuff.
Thank you.
So moving on to our next section, let me introduce Ed Pashan, who's leading, or not leading, who's helping the folks who are leading the efforts in Business Working Group and Deployment and Operations Working Group. So Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm the worker bee. So I'm going to be talking today about two of the working groups in the OnGo Alliance. Oops, I'm going to slip up on that. And how that integrates into the overall structure of the OnGo Alliance. Go to the next slide. So I'm going to be talking about the BWG and the DOWG, and the business working group addresses the what of OnGo. What is it that we need OnGo to do? And also, what do we need the OnGo Alliance to do? And at the other end of things, we look at the how, and that is the realm of the Deployment and Operations Working Group. And they're focused on how do people deploy OnGo, helping people with that question. How do I actually deploy and operate an OnGo network? The clue's in the name. And I'll look at each of these groups in a little bit of detail here in the next couple of minutes. So if we go to the next slide. So the business working group is the what, and we really focus on two real aspects of that. What does the OnGo technology need to do, and what does the OnGo Alliance need to do? And we do that by looking and researching at the needs of members and their customers, as well as the end users of the technology. And we translate that into use cases, scenarios of what it is, features that we think OnGo needs to support in order to encourage adoption in the marketplace. So we take that information, we create use cases and hand those off to the technical working group, but we also look at the business cases associated with these features and look at the business model of a given feature. And we take that same information and look at what we want the Alliance to do. What are the services and support activities that the Alliance can do to help support deployment of OnGo networks. And so we end up interfacing a lot with the other working groups within the organization. It's indicating here, this is where people have problems, this is where we need help, this is something that we need to address. And it is unique amongst the working groups of the OnGo alliances in that all members are allowed to participate in the business working group, including advisors and adopters, I believe. And that's really because we want to try and capture the voice of the customer. And the customer is not just the end users from our perspective, it's actually the members of the organization and their customers. And we want to find out what their needs are so we can respond appropriately. If we go to the next slide. So how we fit into the other working groups, it's a couple of ways. One is the use cases we develop get handed over to the technical working group, and they get turned into requirements and features in the specifications so that people can build devices and provide services. But we also interface with the other working groups, like marketing. We can say this is the places where we see that there's confusion or we need better outreach. We feed into the test and certification working group, saying these are the kinds of services we need to provide as part of certification. These are the things we need to certify, and some guidance on what people want. And likewise with DOWG, we can point to them and say, these are the areas where you should focus your attention. So next slide. Well, we're currently looking at a couple of different topics right now. One is just ongoing responses to rollout of the technology, identifying challenges and solutions in the marketplace, issues that are coming up with customers. We're also wrapping up our examination of neutral host networks and what the different stakeholders in those networks need out of a solution. And if you're not familiar with what a neutral host network is, the short version, it's the idea of providing seamless, transparent roaming to users. So if you are in, say you're in an office building where you don't have particularly good coverage, you can deploy a neutral host network that will extend coverage to the subscribers of the participating carriers, so that your tenants and the occupants of the building get cell coverage. They don't see that they're on anything other than their home network, but they get services provided to them through that neutral host network. So it allows them to extend coverage seamlessly without being detected by the users. And the other thing we're looking at is 5G. What are the needs related to 5G? Where are the gaps? What do we need in terms of services and features to make OnGo successful in the 5G realm as well? Next slide. When we look at a problem, the BWG, what we like to do is divide the market into multiple verticals so that we can assess each vertical's needs, both in terms of features, but also the business cases and business models that are associated with those different segments, because they each have different needs, different situations. So we broadly speak, we speak of these 8 different segments: commercial real estate, education, entertainment, which includes like sports venue arenas and other large public venues. We also look at healthcare, hospitality, which has had a rough year, industrial, looking at industrial 2.0 or 4.0 applications, Internet of Things kind of applications, as well as retail and transportation, where we're looking at mass transit and smart cities and grids. So when we look at a problem, we tend to view it, we take each scenario, each issue that we're looking at, look at it from the perspective of those different verticals. So if you are a company that's in one of these verticals and you want to participate, again, participation in BWG is open to all members, and we are more than happy to take your voice, and actually I would look forward to having your participation. So with that, with BWG, we'll go into the next slide and talk about the other end of thing. We've covered the what. Now we're going to talk about how in deployment and operations working group. And the basic focus of DOWG is to help anyone that's trying to deploy an OnGo network. And we do that through the use through deployment guides and various aids and tools that we can put together. And as OnGo networks are being deployed, we're looking to capture feedback from the members, from people deploying these networks. What are the lessons we've learned? What are the challenges that have been encountered? What can we feed back to the other working groups so that we can address those issues, get those issues addressed by those groups, and what can deployment and operations do to help overcome those challenges in the future? So we go to the next slide. The primary deliverable of DOWG to date has been a set of deployment guides. The first one got published last year, and this was a deployment guide focused on private LTE. And the intent of these deployment guides is for decision makers in an organization that are considering OnGo. The purpose is to walk them through the process. What are the different tasks that need to be done? So we go through the process from gathering requirements, do your initial survey and planning, to designing and installing and then operating your network. And again, the first one was focused on private LTE. We are in the late drafting stages on a neutral host network deployment guide, and that will be actually should be published to the membership for a comment review period following this week's meetings. And it's going to be focused again on neutral host deployment guides, primarily focused on, based off discussions with BWG, we'll be focusing on the MOCN system, the multi-operator core network architecture in that document. These are meant to be living documents. If there's something missing, if there's a topic that you've discovered needs to be addressed, we'll add it. If there's something that's wrong or misleading, we'll fix it. We're intending to maintain these documents as living documents going forward. And these can be provided to your customers, to potential customers, to help walk them through that process of figuring out what is it that I need to do in order to deploy this network, and what are the services that I can look to member companies to provide to help deploy these networks. So that's the deployment guides. We go to the next slide. We're working on several other things. We're also working on a 5G deployment guide. That's in its initial drafting stages right now. And we're also compiling a frequently asked questions document to help people get oriented and answer some of the common questions. These are things that have come up from discussions with members, and also based off information that's in the deployment guides, to put this all in a single place where people can go get information. It's intended primarily to initially to be focused towards the members, but as it matures, we'll publish that to other parties as well. But ultimately we'll do anything anything else that the members need to help deploy OnGo networks. So if there is a resource that you or your customers need, let us know, and we'll look at figuring out some way to address that need. If there are challenges that are coming up, blocking issues, technical challenges, let us know and we'll work to get them fixed, or at least document them well and help walk people through the process of solving those problems within our deployment guides. So we're always looking for contributions from the members, people, their field experience. We're trying to gather that and write it all down so that everybody can help benefit from those lessons learned. So with that, I think that's the end of my section. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I've been watching, no questions have come in. But yeah, interesting, just to clarify, I think a point you made is for BWG, as you mentioned, all members are welcome, so our advisor level members participate there. Mm-hmm. For our DOWG, it's the full and sponsor members, of course, that vote. Our adopter members can be an observer if they would like to be. They just need to let us know they want to participate there. So, or observe there is the proper way of putting that. So. Very good. Doesn't seem, thanks Ed, appreciate that. And we'll go on to our next section. So you can go ahead and go on video mute, yeah, and Oren's coming off video mute. So hi Oren, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Right, thanks everyone. And let's get straight into it. So we're here to talk about really quickly and briefly about OnGo marketing. So again, if we think about, we heard the business working group and certification. In the marketing working group and alliance marketing in general, the idea is really to, our at least main goals, are to grow awareness of the OnGo brand, but really more importantly than that is get awareness in the market of the value proposition. We believe there's a huge opportunity, and you're all on the line here. I think you probably agree that there is a huge opportunity with shared spectrum and potential and what customers can do with it. So getting the word out there and growing the awareness. And if we think of the marketing, the typical marketing funnel, our goal is to get them into the funnel with awareness and more interest, get down there. And once they get into consideration and intent, to hand them over. And we'll talk about that in a minute when we get kind of to the next phases. And we think about awareness. I mean, it's great to try to educate everybody, but I think it's more important to focus on who it makes sense to educate. And you saw before from Ed and Business Working Group, they kind of direct us into what verticals we want to focus on. And we try to focus on, again, those enterprise and vertical markets and try to get specifically to them in our different efforts. And beyond all this, it's also to generate resources that are impactful for the members that they can basically turn around and use for their marketing efforts. And again, we'll see a few examples once we get into it here. Next slide. So I'm talking about brands in general. I just wanted to really quick bring this up. And I think this is a reminder that I personally need in our day-to-day work, but looking out there and working at different companies, especially tech companies, obviously, this is something that everybody, I think, needs to be reminded of, that when talking about brands, two mistakes that we see again and again, that companies sometimes forget. They talk too much about the product and the solution and less about why should people care about this? How will it make their life better? What's in it for them? And again, that's something that we try to remember when we're, again, putting together the collateral and focusing on the different efforts here. In addition to that, it's also really about simplifying the message. You can't expect someone who, and if we talk, going back to enterprises, they have 5,000 things that they're trying to solve. We've been in this kind of CBRS shared spectrum bubble for years now. So it's, again, second nature for us. For them, they're coming into this cold. It's really trying to simplify the message. So again, in everything we do, we really try to take these two into account. And like I said, sometimes we have to revert back to it, but it's really making sure that it's a simple message that really focuses on the customer care abouts. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here in marketing and in general, I think in everything the Alliance is doing, is really to drive change. And I think in our case, when we talk about OnGo, it's really, we could confidently say that it is change for better. Next slide. So one of the things we're doing next month actually is coming up with an OnGo virtual event. We're putting up our own event. This is an external event. We have a huge amount of material and of course a vast number of members all throughout the ecosystem. So it basically makes a lot of sense when we talk about awareness and getting the word out there to have our own OnGo event. It'll be on the last week of February. Not to get too much into details, you'll start to see promotions coming out in the next few days actually. But the idea is to do some broad outreach, but like I said, target it to the ones that would be relevant for the messages we're trying to get through. We'll have some speaking sessions, on-demand videos, and the idea is to really showcase, focus on customer case studies, with other topics on around 5G, the work we're doing around neutral host. Policy is always relevant there. But the bottom line, like I said, going back to kind of the brand and the awareness, is to showcase the work that our members are doing and the customer successes, which are basically a result of that work. So again, tune in, you're going to start seeing promotions for that, and we'd love to see all of you, obviously, at the event at the end of next month. Next slide. So we've been working on this for a while, honestly, OnGo for Dummies. And going back to kind of the simplification theme, it made a lot of sense since this is a complex topic. And it's great to come up with brand, like 1 or 2 taglines, but if someone really wants to get deep into it, but it is coming kind of cold out of this. These aren't necessarily LTE experts or RAN experts, these enterprises and others that are looking to get into it. We put together an OnGo for Dummies using the Wiley brand plus authors there. We were able to come up with something like a 40, 50 page book. And we had to press pause on it for a little bit just to update everything to the OnGo Alliance, but that's been done. And you'll be seeing this come out in the next week or so. And again, another asset that customers, that our membership can basically turn around and send out to their customers. We'll have unlimited copies and PDFs that you'll be able to send to your customers to really get a deep dive. But again, in kind of, I'll call it layman's terms, as much as they could. I think they did a good job of kind of simplifying the complexity that is OnGo and CBRS. Next. So when we talk about driving awareness, and again, when we were 6, 10, 12 members, this was all kind of very small group, but we're at the stage now, which is great, that we're getting approached by customers that either come to the website or approach us directly and are asking for advice on who they could talk to about different solutions. We had someone approached me a few days ago, was asking specifically for an EPC vendor, who could he talk to? A lot are looking for end-to-end consultants. And since we can't, it's great news for us, but we can't obviously direct them to a single member. What we did, we put together our member directory. And what you're seeing here basically is just one example where they could look at different topics. In this case, ecosystem support services. And on the right, you see basically you have a drill down from there to EPC services, roaming hubs, Sas administrators, consulting. So the idea is to turn this into basically a destination site. And if we go back to think about the funnel for a second, once somebody's ready for the consideration phase, we love the fact that as a service to the members, but more importantly, also a service to these customers, we're able to direct them to specific vendors and have them basically pick and choose and basically see everyone that's available there. And this honestly is also driving membership, because since we are the authority on CBRS currently, we turned into a destination site, and it's really important for you as a vendor, again, to get on this directory. And we're seeing a lot of traction. This has only been up for about 2 months, and we're seeing great traction so far, and we're always kind of tuning and retuning the directory itself to make it as efficient as possible. Next one. Another thing that we'd like to do is put together custom research for the membership. So really looking to topics and again, leveraging our scale and working with a lot of analysts, we're able to basically turn around and contract a specific analyst or a group of analysts to put together custom research that we basically distribute to the membership. The one that we recently did was an overview of private networks market from IGR. And the next one that we are looking to do is around neutral hosts. So you've been hearing from both Dave and Ed, we're talking about neutral hosts. That is kind of next big thing that is coming up. So we basically contracted an analyst to put together, and again, this is internal for the membership, an overview of the market, get into some business models, an estimated timeline, and do some interviews with the operators to get some feedback from them. And I think it's important to go out to an external independent analyst, and we're not driving, except, I mean, again, we came up with the topics, but they turn around, come up with their independent opinions and research results on this. And I think it's a great resource at the end of the day that basically we can turn around and provide the membership for free, basically, again, these custom reports. Next and last slide. So more things to look out. Again, I'm going to keep it brief here, but just kind of a taste of things that we're working on. Today we have the OnGo Awards. The ceremony is today. This is something that has been worked on, started at the beginning of last year. COVID kind of pushed it back, but we have a huge amount of, we got a great amount of submissions for actual deployments and different categories and different verticals for OnGo's award, and that's coming out today. I want to thank Emma for that one. We have a brand new website that we, again, are kind of combing back now and updating with the OnGo Alliance, which will really focus, like I said, on simplifying the message and bringing potential customers really quickly to the information they're looking for, while making the value proposition really clear. That's one of our main goals there. You heard about 5G. We'll have a 5G, OnGo 5G white paper coming up there. We get a lot of questions honestly from analysts and from customers, but okay, we're talking today, this is all about LTE. Where does 5G fit in here? And I think we have a great story there as well. So that should be ready within a few weeks. Working on an animated OnGo 101 video, again, under the theme of what can I put in front of a potential customer that really quick will get him intrigued and have him understand that this is something that he needs to look into. Again, there's no way that in 2 minutes you can explain the complexities of everything that is OnGo and CBRS and shared spectrum. The idea is really to intrigue his interest and have him have kind of a light bulb pop up. Okay, this could make sense for me. I want to learn more about it. And then you basically take him down to the next more kind of deep dive level of content, like the dummies or case studies that we have and other things. So talking about case studies, I think that's one of the strongest tools that we could have, because when talking to enterprises, talking to customers in general, they want to hear what other customers are doing with this today, especially with this, we're still kind of in a nascent stage, and people are just, again, the awareness is just starting to get out there on the enterprise side. And like Dave said, private networks is all over the place, the dimension of private networks. So people want to understand better, okay, I get it, I can have my own private network. What can I do with this? Or what is another university, hospitality, industrial factory doing with this today? So our goal is to really showcase what our members are doing with customers through case studies, showcase them through the website, and all the other channels we have. And that's one of the kind of primary goals that we have in front of us. And another thing is neutral host go-to-market. So we've been talking about neutral hosts. Again, BWG is very focused on defining it, and together with the deployment working group, defining the need there and understanding where we want to go. So we want to create buzz in the market, and again, use different tools to create awareness about the fact that CBRS can be used for a neutral solution and target the right audiences to really get the word out there. That's all I had. See if there's any questions there, Alan.
Yeah, we had one question come in about the research reports, it looks like. Where can I find the research reports offered to the membership? And are they also looking at the TAM for vendor solutions like Sun, EPC, SAS, RAN, etc.?
So that's an easy one. I think it's in Causeway, but I could send it directly to whoever, we're not hiding it, but it is in Causeway. Right. Under marketing, but I'd also, I'll send it directly to the person who asked it here, and it does touch the TAM there, and I think it'll give him a lot of info. Again, once you get the report, you can go through it, but it does touch the TAM. That's exactly kind of what we were trying for the different verticals and ecosystem members.
Right. Yeah, and to reinforce what Orn's saying, yeah, those reports will be in the marketing working group portion of Causeway. So those will be available there, but I forwarded you the question, Orn, so you'll be able to see the person who asked. So, and a few other folks. So I'll make sure to link you in there. Very good. All right, excellent. Thank you, Oren. Appreciate it. So next up is our Sas Admin Panel. I invite the Sas admins that are with us to start their video and join us here on stage virtually. So I see Mr. Gibson, I see Mr. Olfat, Sato-san, I believe, is also with us. I think we have a couple other folks. Rob was having a little trouble getting in from Google, and I did receive notice just a few moments ago that Gautam from Amdocs was not going to be able to join us. But what I would do is, again, remind folks as we have our discussion, if you do have questions that you would like the panel to take up, please just type them into the question panel and I'll make sure to serve them up. But fortunately, I come ready to get us started with a few questions from our panelists to help seed the discussion. I'll start with Mark, since he's there first on my screen and then work across. Is Mark, you know, we're a year basically into commercial operations. What would you highlight as one of the lessons learned or a couple of the lessons learned? And I'll work down the panel to give those guys a chance at that.
That's a great, and thanks again, Alan, for putting this together. It's always good to be here with the fellow SaaS providers, providing, you know, hopefully good information to everybody. Since that was my question, I probably should have had an answer for you. I think, you know, so I'd say, you know, there's a few lessons learned. You know, one of them is that, you know, it is, I think we've made this a little more, we've made this a little more complex than it needs to be. I think that the message I'd like people to take away is that, you know, this band is as easy to use as any other band. And so I think what we've learned is that should be our messaging going forward. A lot of people are concerned that, well, I got to get a SaaS and the SaaS has got to get an ESC. Do I have to sign up for an ESC? And what about all these complexities? And or as the guy from, as Jeff Bezos said, I think we've complexified this too much. So I think one lesson learned is, you know, let's just use the KISS principle, and minus the stupid part, perhaps. I think that that may be one key thing that I've learned is, you know, when you're talking to people out there about the benefits of CBRS, it should be all about making more spectrum available for what they want to do. That's it. You know, we shouldn't get into SaaS, we shouldn't get into ESC unless they have questions. We can do all that magic behind the curtain. And let it be about what they need to know about putting this great spectrum to use, 150 megahertz of spectrum to use. So that's my lesson learned right now is KISS is always good.
Got it. Masood, over to you.
First of all, good afternoon and good morning to Sam, and thanks for having this plan and having us. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Mark that that's one of the major, if you want to look at it in a very high level, in a longer range, that's a lesson learned. And I think there are other lessons that we saw. For example, CBRS showed us that we can have a very close interaction and efficient and effective cooperation between the industry and the federal government. I think that was a very good example of such cooperation that was very successful. But I guess Mark is right that for the future spectrums that we are planning to employ any type of sharing, perhaps it's very important that we look at more simplicity so that we can achieve these spectrum sharing faster. For example, one of the major and important aspects that increased the simplicity, the complexity in this band was the requirement for coordination among SaaS admins in every step. That was one of the features that required and created that complexity. So basically, if I want to redesign this, perhaps I'll try to make SaaS admins as autonomous as possible so that we reduce the complexity. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Masood. Sato-san, how about you? Looking at this last year, what would you highlight as maybe a lesson learned that we should be aware of?
Actually, I don't have any additional things. Already Mark and Masood already talk about that. So basically, only one thing, we are working for a specific customer to working on the kind of the operation of the private LT right now. And of course, one thing is different from the, as you know, the CBRS is different. We can work for the kind of private network. We are not only working for a big operator. So that kind of thing we can provide a service to customers. Only just I add to that. So otherwise, I don't have any issues. I don't have any additional things. Thank you.
Very good. So I know Rob is working on joining us right now and navigating the system in. So we'll make sure to give Rob some airtime on that question when we come back around. But Masood, in the meantime,
can you guys?
Oh, Rob,
can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. I'm on, but I'm on voice only. So kind of I'm like the invisible man here.
Oh, you're in semi-stealth mode. Okay, got it. So yeah, the question we've been discussing, as I'm sure you've heard, is what are the lessons learned? What lesson would you guys like to highlight from your perspective over the last year of commercial operation?
Yeah, I would actually like to echo some of the points that I guess Mark kicked it off for us. I think one major lesson here is shared spectrum works, right? There's a bunch more spectrum that's now been injected into the system that we have lots and lots of people getting their home internet over CBRS. We have lots of people doing mobile and a lot of private LTE trials that are happening out there. So it works. There definitely are some nuances to shared spectrum. For instance, if you're on the coast of DP activity, if you're near incumbents, you have to be cognizant of that as well. But all that information you can, if you're thinking about deploying, it's available. You can get it, and it works.
Good deal. Thanks, Rob. So next question, Masood, I'll ask you to kick us off this time, is the PALs. What's the situation with the PALs, the implementation of the PALs? When will they be ready to use, etc.? So where are we with PAL?
Good. Thank you very much. So everybody is aware that the auction 105, which was FCC auction on the PAL, was concluded last year in, I think it was October or end of October, and we Sas admins actually were responsible for running a program to do PAL channel allocation, PAL channel mapping. Everybody is aware that the auction 105 was basically assigning and allocating PAL licenses to the licensees, such as this is like a ticket, not the actual channel. It's like when you go to a movie theater, you get a ticket, but a seat is not assigned to you. Basically, Sas admins were responsible to assigning those seats to the PAL licenses, which is the channel, the actual channel. So we started an activity on that, a very extensive activity. We have created a portal so that the licensees can go in and provide their preferences, both for channel preference within a county, the geographical contiguity across the counties. And then based on that, we Sas admins have designed an algorithm so that based upon the inputs from the PAL licensees and also some of the other criteria such as the channel adjacency and geographical contiguity requirement, we in a very fair manner, without really giving a specific advantage to a particular PAL licensee, allocate those channels to the licenses. So that activity has started. It started late December. The portal is open. I thank you, Alan and OnGo Alliance for putting the kind of the comments at the first page of your website, just informing the PAL licensees they need to go in and go to that portal. An email has been provided, CBRS_PAL_channels@outlook.com, that you can ask question. That activity is planned to continue until January 28th. Of course, that is the contingent to FCC finalizing the fate of some of the licensees in terms of finalizing their licenses. If FCC doesn't complete that work until January 28th, which I think Mark can address better, we might extend that. But with the assumption that the date is not extended, we are planning to announce the initial PAL channels in mid-February, and then allow PAL licensees to do some swapping, and then final PAL channels would be announced early March, and the PAL would be commercialized, which means commercially available, starting from March 20th, 2021. This doesn't necessarily mean that all the PALs would be available and active on March 20th. It depends on the licensees, whether they want to initiate and deploy on their PAL license or not, or PAL channels. It means that the SAS administrators would be ready to start enabling and protecting PAL starting from March 20th. So that is the plan. Of course, as I said, we invite all the PAL licensees to go into that, to go to the portal and provide their inputs. If you have any question, please refer to the email address that I gave, and also it has been given in the OnGo Alliance website.
Very good. Thanks, Masood. So I'd open it up to the other panelists. Any augmentation anything that anyone would like to add on to there? Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I would add, that was a very good explanation and description of how things are going. I would take it, up a level and just kind of take a couple of takeaways. One, licenses can't be used until they're granted. And as of right now, I just checked the commission's URLs, they haven't granted anything. I'm kind of surprised at what's taking so long, because from what I could tell, there's not been any petitions to deny, so I don't know if there's any reason to hold things up. And if there's any licensees out there that are here whose licenses have been granted and they haven't been in the ULS, maybe you should put something in the chat. I'd be curious to know that. As soon as the licenses are granted, then as Masood says, that's kind of when the clock starts ticking, and we had expected, I believe, the end of the month. So, this month, for that timeline to be accurate. And the other thing I would mention too is that, it's interesting juxtaposing this auction to the C-band auction, which just completed on Friday. There will be an assignment phase in that auction, where you can, for certain of the channels that were assigned, or certain of the blocks that were assigned, you'll go back and you will actually bid on how that gets assigned. None of that's needed for CBRS. The SAS is going to do all the channel assignment, for the most part, just once. And here, what we're going to try to do is make it equitable among all license holders, and not cost anything more. So there's no cost to do this. All you have to do is get into the portal that Masood mentioned, and then make your requests, and then we will try to make sure we assign things fairly. So another thing, again, if you did not get an email and you're on the call or on the thing here, and you're a PAL license award winner and you did not get an email, let Alan know. Alan, I think your contact information is easy, and then he'll pass that on to the SAS admins to make sure that we can follow up. Because it's critical that you get access to that portal to let the SAS admins know your interests and your needs as soon as possible, so that we can do our stuff. Go ahead, Masood.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Mark. As I mentioned, on December 26th, all the PAL licenses should have received a guideline, as well as a set of username and password, and the address of that portal, please note that we have used the official contact person for that any licensee has with FCC as part of the auction 105. So every company, every PAL licensee, please make sure you identify the official contact. If you don't know, contact us through the email address that I mentioned, and we'll be happy to clarify that. If you have not received an email on late December, you need to contact us as soon as possible. If somebody does not go into the portal and does not provide any input, we assume that the input from that licensee is neutral, and that might be disadvantageous for that licensee. One other additional thing that I want to add is thank you, Mark, for clarification that yes, it is absolutely correct that the end of January deadline that you mentioned is with the assumption that FCC grants the licenses. If FCC does not, which is out of our control, then things are going to be extended or delayed, and we will inform PAL licenses. Please watch an email coming from the address that I gave, CBRS_PAL_channels@outlook.com. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Masood. Sato-san or Rob, any augmentation, anything you want to make sure we cover under this? Yes, Sato-san.
Just one thing, just one thing, Alina, and also after the PAL protection started, Sas administrator started working on PAL leasing or such kind of stuff. So at this moment, we cannot do the PAL leasing stuff, but we will start working that with FCC. So please wait for such kind of, if you want to use the rent a PAL or kind of to try to get the PAL licensing, Sas administrator started working on after the PAL channel is assigned. So that's one information. Thank you.
Thank you, Sato-san. Rob, anything you want to make sure we cover here? I've got a couple of questions coming in along these lines, but I want to make sure to give you some airtime.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and take the questions. Because I think one top line message, since this is OnGo 101, is the PAL, Masood and Mark and Sato-san, they covered what happens for PAL license holders. For people who are not PAL licensed, it's just a friendly reminder here, there's still lots of spectrum available. There's still 80 megahertz that's PALs only cover 70 megahertz. PALs are only, or better said, PAL protection areas, what are called PPAs, are only granted when a PAL holder deploys. So if that PAL holder is not deployed, that all those PAL channels are still available. So I hope for those who are listening who are not PAL holders, don't let PAL scare you. Go in eyes wide open, do your research, find out who's the PAL holder in your particular county, but there's still lots of GAA available.
Along those lines, you've hit upon a question that's been asked by 3 different people in 3 slightly different ways, but I think it's underlying the same thing. Is I'll try to pick one that's maybe the most brief. Is there a way to see what the PAL assignments are going to be, or when they are assigned, where that will be located, so that folks can see what's happening? Masood? Yeah.
Thank you. So of course, the result of the PAL auction is public, as far as I know. Mark, please correct me if I'm not accurate. The result of the PAL auctions are public, and you can obtain it from FCC website. Basically, it's a spreadsheet. It tells that in which county which licensee has been allocated a license. So that's number one. So as far as FCC's the result of auction, that's public. We have no control on that. However, SAS administrators, after the PAL channel allocation are completed, we are gonna reflect those results in the portal that I mentioned, and the PAL licensees, by using their username password, they can go into that portal, and in each county they can see which channel has been allocated to which licensee. That's number 2, which is only for the PAL licenses in a limited amount of time. But on top of all those, we are planning to implement a database, and that database is going to be hosted by WinForum. That database, we call it PAL shared database, and that database includes the all of the PAL licenses, every individual PAL license in all counties, who owns them, and also which channel has been allocated to them. So those are the that's a public database. It's going to be permanent. The portal, of course, is not going to be permanent, but that database is permanent, and they can be reached out by. I think you need to talk to WinForum about. But as far as at least the members of WinForum, they can freely look at that. I don't know about the rest. We can talk to WinForum about that. But that's where all the results, in addition to FCC website, would be reflected. This, I want to clarify. Thank you, Rob, for clarifying about the PPA. That doesn't include the PPAs and where the PAL is actually being used. Those are the licenses and the channel allocated. The usage of the PAL is very dynamic, and it might change day by day, and even the geographical area, which channel, how, that is a dynamic information that can be changed day by day. So,
got it. Thank you, Masood. Kind of a follow-up to that. It looks a question's come in. What is the algorithm being used to assign the PALs their allocation? Or their assignment is the proper term, I believe. Is that visible? Is that algorithm visible to others for, so that they understand how this is being done? Maybe Mark, you start us off first, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I'm going to defer to Masood. He and some of my colleagues have done that, but he knows the guts of this thing. So go ahead, Masood, take it away. But let's leave some time for the secondary market question, because these two are really connected. So yeah, and we only have like 8 minutes left or 9.
Yeah.
So go for it, Masood.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be the sole speaker here, but thank you for your kindness, Mark. Yeah. So we have designed an algorithm among our SAS admins. So that algorithm, very specifically, we are looking at the fairness. Basically, what we do, we have defined some objective functions, and those objective functions are based upon several aspects, including the inputs from the licensees, how licensees desire to have channels, and also some other aspects such as the contiguity that I just explained. There are 2 requirements from FCC, namely a PAL licensee having multiple licenses within a county are expected to have adjacent channels to each other, as well as a PAL licensee having license across 2 neighboring counties are expected to have the same channel. So those are some criteria that we have in mind, in addition to the inputs from all licensees on different channels, and also encumbrances that we have in different areas. Based on that, we have designed an objective function, and we are trying to optimize that objective function for all PAL licenses. So it is possible that maybe one PAL licensee does not get exactly what they want within a county, because we are not objecting for one PAL licensee. We are optimizing for basically all PAL licenses. If you have any question, my suggestion is that reach out to that email address, and SAS admins are working on that, and we will decide how to publicize the actual detail of the algorithm. But the best way is to reach out to that email address that I mentioned.
Thanks, Masood. So yeah, to Mark's point, we are down to about 7 minutes, and we do have a good question here about what's going on with the secondary market, the spectrum use in the secondary market, and Mark, let me pick on you now. What's happening with the secondary market?
Oh, that's a good question. Right now, as most people know, the secondary market won't come into focus until the PALs get assigned, because that's where the secondary market comes from. So right now, the secondary market is waiting for the PALs. However, the alliances are forming, let's say. Those that are interested in making secondary spectrum, those PAL holders that are aware that know that they want spectrum are looking at leveraging or making their spectrum available. So, they're reaching out to people right now to set up opportunities that can be made available once the PAL assignment has happened. The SASs still need to go through our own algorithms to accommodate that. So if Masood's timeline holds, or I should say the timeline holds that we talked about at roughly the end of March, secondary market support should be available within SASs shortly thereafter. Not coincident perhaps, but certainly shortly thereafter. And then those that bought a PAL license that are interested in putting on the secondary market should be able to do so. So I'd say that the secondary market is coming into focus. It's hard to tell how much interest there is there. I'd say that, because of the GAA capabilities that that we have here, I think the secondary market will be a little bit better identified once the PALs are rolled out and the PAL protection areas are claimed, and people see whether they can operate on GAA or whether they need to operate on GAA or need to operate on PAL. So we'll see, but that's really the timeline on the secondary market coming into focus, probably sometime toward the end of the second quarter.
Got it. Sato-san, anything to augment there?
Yeah, Mark already mentioned about that this timeline. So second quarter, yeah, we try to finalize all secondary markets. Yeah.
Got it. Rob, anything from you on the secondary market side?
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, Alan, I'll just loop back briefly to the question about seeing PPAs, seeing the impact of PPAs. So in our SAS portal today, we have a spectrum availability heat map that shows you the impact of higher tiers like FSS, like GWPZ, and you can see kind of the maximum, if you will, spectrum availability. And we intend to do the same with PALs. So of course you're not going to be able to see exactly where someone has deployed a radio with their PAL license, but you will see the impact of that via a heat map, just through a maps-like interface. So that is something that'll be available for anyone in the audience who's interested in that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Masood. Any last thoughts on the secondary market from your perspective?
Yeah, I think my friends mentioned. Just want to add one thing. The spectrum market can be done. Leasing in CBRS can be done like a like conventional leasing on all spectrums. However, in addition to that, we are working with FCC on another approach, which is called light touch, that makes it much more efficient and faster, unlike other spectrums that a process might take a long time to go into the database. Light touch can do it in several minutes, and for that, SAS admins are involved. And so we are working with FCC to finalize that. We don't expect that to be done early in March. It might take a little time. We are working with FCC on that. But on top of that, of course, the SASs, including federated, we are also having some plans to make sure that this spectrum marketplace can be done in an efficient and very fast way for the customers. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Masood. And just to let everybody know, we did get a couple of questions on that email address. I did put it into the answer to a couple of questions. So please take note of that if you are interested in that email address. The slides again will be available, and the information will be available. It's also feel free to drop me an email. If you lose track of that email address or need some additional help, I'm happy to connect you to all the right folks and let you get the conversations going that you need. With that, we're almost up against our time. I want to say thank you to our SAS admins. Sato-san, thank you again for your dedication and your early rising to join us, and I hope all is well in Japan. Masood, Mark, thank you as always. Very insightful from all of our panel members. Rob, sorry you're having a little difficulty there with the tools, but you powered through and got in the audio, so it all worked out well. We did get some additional questions, gentlemen. I will share those with you after the fact, and we can, do some text answers so that everybody, has their questions answered, give you all an opportunity to work on those. I want to thank everybody who's attended today. I think our Sas Admin Panel is always one of the highlights, really, of this session, because we get to talk about things that are really on top of mind, things that are critical to our joint success here, and the learning and having the, this will sound trite, but it's not meant to be. This is the wellspring of information that you got here. This is the source. These guys that are on the panel here, nobody knows more about what's going on in the world of SaaS, and being able to bring them to you to address those questions is, I think one of the great things that the Alliance does for its members and its potential members. So thank you again, gentlemen. I also want to say thank you to everybody who's attended today. We're going to go ahead and close the session now. I wish you all, safety and good health. And let's join back together. We do have sessions tomorrow. We have the OnGo Awards starting up in half an hour. So if you are interested in joining the OnGo Awards session, learning who the OnGo Award winners are, that's why I've got the sports coat on today. I'll have the envelopes that I rip open and read the names. So I'm very excited about being MC for that event. Thank you, everybody. Take care, stay well, and look forward to talking to you more. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye now.
Everyone else has left the call.